There is so much going on in Jamaica today, and we're covering it all in this evening's edition of All Angles, or at least it may seem like it by the time we get through. I'm Dion Jackson, and coming up on this program, questions about the makeup of the Constitutional Reform Committee. Are there just too many lawyers on the committee? What about all the other groups? Also concerns about new contracts security guards are being asked to sign. But first, Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke responded in Parliament yesterday to criticisms of him having referred to the opposition leader Mark Golding as Massa Mark. Now, here's a bit of what he had to say in his explanation yesterday.
My remarks have been misconstrued, my motives have been misrepresented, and my intentions have been distorted. I regret that some persons may have viewed my remarks as racially motivated. To again be clear, that was never my intention. To apologize, however, Madam Speaker, would be to legitimize what simply is not true.
And by way of explanation, the Finance Minister said that the word massa used in modern day Jamaica is not used in a racial context. He said it's not about power, it's not about color, beg your pardon, it's about power. Just for context, let's just play the original statement he had made in which he referred to Mr. Golding as Massa Mark.
When the opposition leader referred to labor rights, Madam Speaker, or those who identify with a particular party known as the Jamaican Labour Party. And I can't say the words, but he said, beep fools. Beep fools. Call them beep fools. Madam Speaker, that never sound like Marky G to me. That sound like Massa Mark. Massa Mark, Madam Speaker.
So, whole heap of controversy over that statement. Was it a racially offensive statement? Was it not, as the Finance Minister has said? And we want your thoughts on that. So do WhatsApp me. It's 3810072, 876-3810072. Give us your first name. Give us your general location. You can tweet us as well. Our hashtag is TVJ All Angles. We're joined by Dr. Clive Forrester. He joins via Zoom from the University of Waterloo in Canada, where he lectures in English language and literature. Dr. Forrester, good to talk to you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Diane. Nice to be back on your show. Looking forward to the discussion.
So first of all, should Dr. Clarke have apologized?
All right, well, before we get to the apology, it's important to kind of talk about the context in which the statement was made, right? When people communicate and they think about the meanings of words, words could have either denotative or connotative meanings. And the denotative meaning of a word is what you'd find in a dictionary. But the connotative meaning is usually the meaning that is more important. That is the meaning that is derived from the particular context of communication. So when Dr. Clarke says that the way that Jamaicans use massa nowadays doesn't have the racial undertone or the racial stereotyping, but instead it is referring to issues of power, he is correct. But in the context in which he used it at that time in Parliament, any reasonable Jamaican could interpret what he said as something having a racial stereotype, particularly because he, I guess, was trying to reprimand Mr. Golding by saying that what Mr. Golding said about labor rights effectively doesn't seem characteristic of Marky G. And Marky G, of course, is the grassroots, down-to-earth guy. Instead, it seems more like Massa Mark, which, of course, kind of is a jibe at the fact that Mr. Golding is a white Jamaican politician, and white Jamaican politicians have traditionally always have had to defend their authenticity as Jamaican persons who belong to Jamaica. And in that regard, the average Jamaican person would be right to interpret it as racially stereotyping Mr. Golding.
Except though, you sound like you're trying to have your cake and eat it. Because on the one hand, you're saying that Dr. Clarke is correct in saying that,
yes,
essentially the use of the word has evolved. It means power, it no longer means
right.
race. But then you're saying because he used it, it's used in a racial context. For one thing, you're trying to get into his head, which you clearly can't do. And he has put on the record to say his intent was not to be racial.
Right.
So if he's saying his intent was not to be racial, and you're acknowledging that there are non-racial uses of the term, then what's wrong with his explanation?
So it's not that the explanation is wrong, but let me see if I could offer a parallel example. So let's say somebody utters the statement, if you don't pay me my money, I promise that you won't live to see tomorrow. Now, the speaker uses the word promise, and promise means a commitment to do something good for somebody. But the way that sentence is interpreted is as a threat. And so, however, the speaker can say, well, I never made any threats. I said the word promise. And because of that, I guess you could call it a technicality, the fact that the word promise denotatively means something good, but the way that it was used in that particular utterance is clearly a threat. The speaker is interpreted as being threatening, but their actual words, the denotative meanings of the words would indicate something else. And I think that is the kind of space that you'd find Dr. Clarke's utterance time around.
But let's go to context, as you're saying,
yes,
because the context here is Gordon House. And we know what happens in Gordon House. Well, I mean, you can be polite and speak about the cut and thrust of debate, of parliamentary debate, but the reality is that you also have a whole heap of throw word, across the aisle. They call each other's names, sometimes in good fun, for real. Because you can see somebody will say something and the other people will be laughing, and they'll be laughing with one another. Every now and then it erupts and somebody get vexed and then walk out. This is true. But the fact is that oftentimes in Gordon House, they trade what sounds like insults, but, it's part of the political game that they're playing.
True.
So in that context, why is it problematic?
Because the addressee, Mark Golding, is white. Fine? So some of the examples that Dr. Clarke gave to show that Massa is used in race-neutral context was, say for instance, when Christians talk about Massa God, or when a disgruntled union member talks about the Bakra Massa treatment at work. Now, when two Afro-descended persons use Massa or Bakra Massa with each other, it is usually in the race-neutral meaning of the phrase, but it still has that power dynamic and that power dimension, and it is usually kind of tongue-in-cheek. But when the addressee is white, that is when it takes on its racial undertones, because the fact that this person is white and the person who is making the utterance is Afro-descended, is a black person, it now opens up the possibility for that racial stereotyping interpretation.
All right, I'm actually nearly out of time, so let me go back to my first question. Should he apologize?
Massa, me no choose none.
I don't mean you call Massa though.
No.
Because a lot of times these politicians' apologies are performative, right? They apologize just to take the heat off themselves, to calm down a controversy.
Yes.
They're not serious about the apology. They don't mean it. So what's wrong with Dr. Clarke saying, I meant no offense and therefore I'm not apologizing? Plus, I don't believe the word means what y'all are saying it means.
Well, he should have said it. If an apology was going to come, it should have been very early. It should have been like immediately after. Fine, but he dug in and kind of offered up, I guess it was like a mini linguistics lecture in Parliament about the etymology of the word and the non-racial uses of the term. So now, for him to apologize at this stage would be extremely face-threatening, right? He'd lose a tremendous amount of face if he were to apologize at this stage, even though it might very well be the appropriate thing to do.
Still, even if, like I said, it's performative in so many cases?
Well, yes. Well, I mean, it might be performative, but the fact that he would be kind of, I guess, withdrawing his statement and kind of backtracking on what he said as a direct request from the members on the opposing side of Parliament would be possibly enough.
All right, I'm going to have to leave it there. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. Dr. Clive Forrester joining us from Canada. He is a Jamaican, as you can tell, lecturing in the Department of English Language and Literature there. Let's take the break. When we come back after, how many lawyers does it take to constitute a constitutional reform committee? Apparently, whole heap, judging by the composition of ours. We'll get some comment on that when we come back. Okay, thank you so much for staying with us. Remember, you can WhatsApp us. It's 876-381-0072, 876-381-0072. You can tweet us as well. Our hashtag is TVJ All Angles. So, you know, they have jokes like, how many engineers does it take to screw in a light bulb? How many lawyers does it take to screw in a light bulb of constitutional reform? Well, let's count, shall we? Just after we hear this charge that was given to the Constitutional Reform Committee, which has been named by Prime Minister Andrew Holness. So let's listen to him in just a moment. But first, let me, after all, count. So this is a committee. Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahoo Fort, is a co-chair, lawyer. Co-chair is Ambassador Rocky Mead, non-lawyer. Attorney General Dr. Derek McCoy, lawyer. Senate President Tom Tavares Finson, lawyer. Government Senator Ransford Braham, lawyer. Opposition Senator Donna Scott Motley, lawyer. Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Western Anthony Hilton, lawyer. International constitutional law expert Professor Richard Albert, don't know if he's a lawyer, but he's certainly a legal expert. National constitutional expert Dr. Lloyd Barnett, lawyer. Consultant counsel and nominee of the Leader of the Opposition, Hugh Small, lawyer. Representative of the Faith-Based Society, Dr. David Henry. Civil Society Representative, Dr. Nadine Spence. Chair of the National Committee on Reparations, Lolita Davis Mattis, who I believe is a lawyer. And Youth Advisor, Sujay Boswell. Do we really need all these lawyers? Is it over heavy? Are there people who have been left out who should have been included? Joining us to comment in this section of the program, we have Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, Michael Jackson. Lawyer? Non-lawyer? Michael? Matondo Makulo joins us from the UK. Here he's a barrister, so yeah, he's a lawyer. Helene Davis-White, General Secretary of JALGO, Jamaica Association of Local Government Officers, and head of the Confederation of Trade Unions. Non-lawyer, Helene. So let me ask you all, and let me start with the non-lawyers. So, Michael Jackson, what do you think of this composition of this committee that's supposed to oversee and guide the process of constitutional reform?
Let me just start from the place of, from our estimation, the lack of diversity in the skill sets that are there. Dare I say that when you talk about constitutional reform, it's not just a legal matter. Certainly, technical expertise is needed, but the technical expertise has to also be grounded in the principle of governance structure. Somebody who understands government system, especially where electoral reforms and so on are considered. We also look at the concept of human rights, especially in the disposition of where we are as a country and the review of the charter that we expect in phase 2 of the process of the Reform Committee. So we look at the previous iteration of the Constitutional Reform Commission of the 1990s, and you saw a more broad-based approach that was taken with the trade unions, for example, that were included. But significantly for us is not just the legal expertise that is overbearing in the structure, but I think there is a lack of institutional representation that would have allowed for greater levels of consensus building and participation. So that is something I think really is worth further discussion as we go through the program.
What do you think, Helene? Too lawyer heavy?
I certainly believe so. And the truth is that we have adopted in Jamaica a system of a multi-stakeholder approach to national decisions. And I believe that this is one of the issues that could benefit from the multi-stakeholder approach. From the point of view of the trade union movement, we have adopted the social dialogue approach, which is really about ensuring that you have the main groups in society coming together to bring to the table and to make decisions, or certainly to make recommendations as to what it is that should be in place in relation to any issue. And I think the issue of constitutional reform is probably the most important issue that could benefit from this multi-stakeholder approach. We're talking about a constitution that all of us as Jamaicans are going to have to live up to and have to observe, etc. And so I think as many persons that you could get, as many groups in the society that you could get in terms of them being involved at the table, I think it would have served us better than having a room full of lawyers. Because yes, the constitution may have a legal construct to it, but the government employs a team of lawyers in the various different departments and so on that could help in terms of being able to ensure that the constitution is in fact meeting the mark in terms of what is required legally. So we think the government should really go back, and I think this government and governments before have actually taken on this multi-stakeholder approach, and it has served us well. I could argue that that is one of the reasons why we are enjoying a kind of economic success, because when we had problems with the economy, we brought all stakeholders together and we could see the results. So we believe that that is the best approach.
Matanda Makula, you're going to defend your side?
I mean, I don't think the question of if you have too many lawyers. I think the correct question is, do you have the lawyers who are experts in constitutional affairs?
Sorry, let's be clear. Let's be clear. Before you jump to the second question, let's be sure of your position on the first. Are there too many lawyers on the committee?
No, I don't think there are too many lawyers.
So you are defending your side?
Yes. But I'm defending from the perspective that no one listening on tonight would dare say there are too many doctors on a panel looking at how we perform cardiac surgery at any. No, counsel. Completely inappropriate analogy there. If your analogy was going to be the reform of the healthcare system in Jamaica, that would be one thing. But cardiac surgery, obviously, that is something that the only people who can speak to that are the doctors and specialists in that area. Come on, compare mangoes and mangoes, or gideps and gideps. The point I'm making there is we should not start suggesting to ourselves that we do not need the experts in the room, and the experts on the constitution in any country will be constitutional lawyers.
But that's not what I heard either Michael Jackson or Helene saying. They're just saying a constitutional reform is not just a legal process, it's a political process in which the people should have a say. Not just the people in bibs and black suits.
No, these are trained persons who have the expertise to look at the constitution. I think when I listened to the minister did say there will be consultation. I mean, we're giving the impression as if
all the lawyers will be locked in a room, and then they come out with this fancy document, and nobody in the society will get an opportunity to have an input. That's not correct.
Except in relation to the first phase, it pretty much is correct, though, because the first phase is going to involve the committee, which needs to come up with a document in about 2 months. And I'll bring up the terms of reference during the break, which says they may call on specialist expertise if they so choose. So there are no widespread consultations during this first phase at all.
That's a different issue. I'm saying that's a different issue in terms of process. We're talking about composition here. I don't think that it is realistic to achieve these objectives in 2 months, and it's not even sensible it wasn't sensible to have said that. That's premised on, we all seem to agree that we're going to move towards a Republican system. I don't think we should put it that we're going to achieve it in 2 months.
All right, hold that thought for me. I'm going to come to the break. I'm going to go to the break. We're going to come back for a little bit, and I'll allow the others to respond to Matonda Makula as well. So stay tuned. We're back in a moment.